Welcome to the NBA Recap Show on the Mojo Sports Network. I'm your host, Alexander J. from Beerball Bites. This is the Week 3 recap of everything in the NBA. On today's show, we take a look at all the news stories, the stats, the trends, and the performances that interested us in the last week in the association. Plus, we're even going to take a look at a couple of under-the-radar teams in early November. You can't really be too under the radar in early November. Today's guest joining me from Shepparton, it's Jack Brophy. How are you, Jack?
Good to be back and sort of a new platform for us here. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. I'm excited.
We've upgraded from the old Zoom trick. Yuri Bilsic is our reporter from Perth. How are you, mate?
Great, Alex. And another fantastic week of the NBA, the in-season tournament. The courts, yes, they still garner some attention here and there. But yeah, some teams are really off to very good starts at the moment. And one of those teams in the Western Conference we'll touch on sooner than later. But it's all looking good on both sides of the ledger.
And joining us, usually he's Mr. Tom Dev. Today he's Mr. International, joining us from Boston, Massachusetts. Tom, what's going on?
Oh, not much. Just fresh back from the TD Garden where my Celtics absolutely obliterated your Raptors. So it's been a good night.
Yeah, I was hoping to avoid that. What time is it where you are at the moment?
It's only 11:05. Early tip-off tonight, so I can't complain. No, it's not too bad.
Not too bad at all. Look, just in case you do want to duck off halfway through the show, we'll get your Celtics stuff out of the way. Tell us what's interested you in the NBA this week. Start with the Celtics stuff. What have you been doing? What games have you seen? Tell us about high-fiving Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, so we'll start off with the disappointing part of the week, which is the first two games where they lost to the Wolves and the Sixers. You know, Wolves in overtime, Sixers by 3 points. Should have probably been more. They miraculously came back in the end. And look, in both those games, the same problems as last season came up. You know, the offense stalled in the fourth and in the clutch and turnovers in crucial moments. I mean, just when it looked like we were getting back in that Sixers game, Jaylen Brown decides to dribble up the ball and he just loses it about 4 times, and eventually the Sixers grab it, go the other way, score it easy too. And look, since I've got here, I've watched us have easy wins against the Nets and the Raptors tonight. And look, the wide range of weapons and the even spread of the scoring load is on show. Holiday nearly had a triple-double. Tatum hasn't even scored 30 yet since I've been here. Brown, since I have high-fived him, as you mentioned, is averaging 28.5 points. I'll try and take a little bit of credit for that. And look, Porzingis isn't even breaking a sweat half these games. I mean, he hasn't even seen the fourth quarter in these last 2 games and hasn't needed to. But look, on the surface level, it looks great. But if you actually really break it down, Tatum is still carrying a lot of the load. I mean, this is before tonight's game, so I haven't got the updated stats yet. But with Tatum on the floor, Celtics are a plus 124. And without him, they're minus 26, which is it's quite bad. Like, minus 26 for any player is bad, but for that big of a discrepancy is massive. And look, Mazzulla looks to have worked out the rotations. He keeps one of Holiday, White, or Tatum on the floor at all times. He has the ball handler. And look, through 9 games, we're 7-2, third in offense and defense, first in net rating and point differential. But here's my question to you guys. Do the Celtics need a statement win? I mean, we've had wins against the Knicks, Heat, Nets twice, Pacers, Raptors, Wizards. But our losses, Timberwolves and Sixers, which are really, out of those 9 games, they're the only real contenders, you'd have to say. Maybe the Knicks and Heat fringe at the moment, but not really. And so our next 3, Knicks at home, Sixers in Philly, and then Raptors in Toronto. I mean, if they go 3-0 those, you've got to tip the hat. But until then, I'm not really saying that we're unbeatable.
Yeah, I'd be hanging out for that Sixers victory. Yuri or Jack, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think so as well after what happened against Philadelphia. But Boston have always gone off to great starts in the last 5 seasons, though. 7-2 once more. 7-2 and sitting on top of the Eastern Conference alongside the Philadelphia 76ers. You couldn't ask for a better start than that as well. And we talked about a couple of shows ago, right, about their win prediction of last season winning 57 games. They'll get to 53, 54 once more. And it's the offensive firepower that they already have, right, where you can put up 55 points against Indiana. You can jack up 40 or 41 three-point attempts per game, which basically ranks top 3 alongside the Sacramento Kings and Dallas Mavericks. And they're hitting those at, a 38, 39% clip, right? It's the way that they structure their offense, though, and Tom very well knows this too, with KP. And they have that great luxury now of playing Porzingis down the low block. And we saw that countless times today against the Raptors. We've seen it countless times in other Celtics games. And I think that's where the real differential within their offense now that they can supply to when the ball isn't going down from 3-point land, is that they can dump it down to Porzingis and let him go to work. And it's really ticking along nicely for the C's at the moment. And what they did on the defensive end from basically the start of the second half and in the last quarter as well, just basically putting the clamps on the Raptors it was pretty stunning to watch, right? But it's no surprise considering the Celtics have been a top 5 defensive team for the last handful of seasons.
Probably from a holistic point of view, I think, would you say they're 7-2 at the moment? So they've got this winning form to start the season, and they've got these new players that have all come in, including obviously Holiday and Porzingis, who are going to be on the floor in the fourth quarter when the games get tight. So I think for them in the games that they've probably lost, the ones that you've seen, Tom, and it's been that close at the end, they've still got to gel together the fact that they're a new team. And I think that maybe in 20 games' time, if they're not sort of winning those sort of games, you can be a bit questionable. But I think they just need time to sort of gel and have those sort of final 2-minute wins and get used to each other's sort of game around there. And then I think they'll be okay.
Jaylen Brown had a slow start to the season too, Tom. You had that statement, 28. What do you have, 28 points most way through the Nets game, like at the end of the third? I don't know what he finished on, but that was his best game of the season, and he'd been pretty slow earlier as well. So, I think we've all got really great points. Like, let's be worried if this is no statement wins in 15 or 20 games. What's been the best point of the experience that you've been through so far, Tom? Is it high-fiving Jaylen Brown courtside? Let's just throw that in, make sure everyone knows.
It's definitely up there. Luckily through a connection that my mum just happened to make with a friend's nephew, I was able to get courtside access pre-game to the Nets game, and I was standing there, and next minute Jason Tatum is a meter away from me, and there's Jaylen Brown, White, Holiday, Porzingis, and everyone, and they're all coming by, and they're walking right past me, which was just incredible. And then I got to sit while they were warming up right on the baseline, and Tatum and his son are directly in front of me. And it's really surreal because it's all the stuff that you see in TV, and here it is right in front of your eyes, and it is nuts. And then having Jaylen Brown walk past and high five me, notably with the right hand, as I joked in the group chat. Doesn't like to use the left even in his daily interactions, but no, it's surreal. And even just being in the games in general. I mean, unfortunately, courtside tickets aren't in my budget, so I wasn't sitting there. But even at the top, it's crazy, and you get seats anywhere. Tonight, I was at the very back row, top level, and you see everything perfectly. It's just as good, if not better, than TV. So anyone listening who's thinking about going to the NBA and seeing that all the cheap-ish tickets, and I say that a little bit with an eye roll because they're still not cheap all the way at the back. I can tell you, TD Garden, still worth it wherever you sit.
All right, Jack, what has been of interest to you in the NBA this week? What's caught your eye?
Well, for me, Alex, and I spoke about this with you, I believe, yesterday. I sort of wanted to make a little bit of a statement around where teams are at, and we're around the 10-game mark throughout the season. So I think that there is a stage now, and I'm going to call it stage 1, of teams that cannot win the title. And so for the start of the season, obviously there's teams that you go, well, they can't win it anyway. But you sort of need to see them for the first 10 games to really go, yeah, okay, no, they're not going to be good enough. So I'll go through just quickly for who I don't think can win the title so far. And if you've got any you think you could add to that, or if there's ones that I'm being a bit harsh on, let me know. But yeah, I'll start with the East, and we've got obviously my Pistons, Wizards, Bulls, Hornets, and Raptors. And yeah, the Hornets and Raptors are in 10th and 11th, but now that Cleveland's probably going to win this game at the time of recording, I think Cleveland should be okay from their spot. In the West, I've got basically in order from the bottom, you've got Grizzlies, Jazz, Spurs, and Trailblazers. And I thought about it for a while. Is it too early to rule out the Grizzlies? But they're 1-8. They still don't get Jar back for a while, and obviously Steven Adams is out for the year and a lot of other injuries.
I don't want to be the homer. I'm just saying the Raptors have the assets to make a deal mid-year, and spoiler alert, Scotty Barnes will be my performance of the week. They've got an interesting core. I wouldn't rule them out for another 20 games. I don't think they're very good. I think they're interesting. They've got the points.
Do you think they're mid-level and potentially playoffs go okay?
It depends. I think it depends what the Bulls do. If the Bulls are awful and clearly blow it up, there's a possibility to bring DeRozan back on an expiring deal. I don't think the Raptors do that, but that gives you mid-range shooting. Zach LaVine's on a hell of a large contract as well and could be got. There's a couple other pieces that, like, the Raptors need shooting. That's very clear. And that's the one thing that they're lacking. So those two play for the same team, have a chance of blowing it up. I'm going to look like a genius if this comes off in 4 months. So I'll mark this clip down just in case. But Yuri, Tom, what do you think about the rest of those teams? Because I think that's a pretty accurate list.
Yeah, it is pretty accurate, Alex. And the Grizzlies, of course, with no Brandon Clark too, still rehabbing from his Achilles injury, which he sustained back on, I think it was March 3rd last season. That's also another detrimental blow to the Grizzlies front court, because I think Kenneth Lofton Jr. played some minutes as well in their most recent game too against Utah Jazz, which they lost to the Jazz for like the second time in a week. And it's not really helping matters on the defensive end that they just keep getting blown by that easily. And it's not normally like that under Taylor Jenkins, where they're so really stringent in a way with their defensive principles, and to be leaking threes everywhere and to be giving up points in the paint, and the rebounding too, which has taken somewhat of a dip as well, considering they're basically a top 3 rebounding team for the last couple of seasons. That's a real glaring concern moving ahead. But you only have to look as one example to LA Lakers last season when they were 2-10, right? So not everything is lost. So if you take away the whole playing tournaments and all that the league has introduced for the last 3 seasons, and you take that away, then you can most likely say, well, they're in deep trouble. But with the playing tournament there from 7 down to 10, they're still well and truly in the window as well. But they've somehow got to at least figure out a few tinkerings on the defensive end to really sort of make a run at it, because we've seen now the Kings start to at least gain a little bit of sort of, not ascendancy back, but their win over OKC was a real gritty performance as well. And Domantas Sabonis was excellent too. And also Malik Monk hit a couple of big shots as well in the fourth quarter. And they're still trying to buy themselves out on the defensive end too. So I think when you sort of tie it all in together as well, don't discount the Grizzlies out just yet. But as we all know, in the Western Conference is super competitive late in as well. And you can't really afford to leave your run too late and be 5, 6, 7 games out of that 10th spot with like 30, 35 games remaining.
Tom, I'd be interested in your thoughts too. I mean, I don't want to get rid of Wemby's chances at a finals appearance in year 1, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, well, firstly, it's good to see you have faith in the Raptors, because at halftime in the game today, the Raptors fans and Celtics fans are arguing in the bathroom whether Siakam could get 1 or 2 first-round picks. So it's nice to see you still have faith.
I did text you. I turned the game off at 3/4 time. I wasn't watching the end of that.
Oh, it was a fun fourth quarter, you know. Peyton Pritchard got to take over the offense. That's what everyone comes to Boston to watch. But no, look, on the Spurs, I think it's still too early. I mean, one guy can only do so much. And I wouldn't be surprised if Wemby sort of takes Luka's direction, where he's really good, bad team, then the team kind of gets better, and he has to sort of work out how he needs to get everyone involved, opposed to him just doing all the work. But yeah, for now, I'd be shocked if the Spurs make it. And, you know, not to step on someone else's toes for their next segment, but early days. But I'm not exactly too afraid to put the Clippers in the non-title contender conversation either.
The more I get to know you, Tom, the more I realize you're excellent at segues, and we can move straight to what has interested Yuri in the NBA this week, and it is the Los Angeles Clippers.
Oh, sure is, Alex. And I think the whole surprising factor in trying to gel superstar chemistry all together at once as well, and especially what happened with James Harden and Russell Westbrook when they were teammates together for that one season with the Houston Rockets back in 2019-20, where they just couldn't quite coexist, which is unusually strange enough alone, because all those years ago when they were together at OKC, it didn't really seem to be a problem. But I think the issue going forward now is floor spacing, especially with those two there. And we've seen teams just sag off Westbrook and allow him to take those 18, 20-foot jumpers. And if he makes them, well, they'll live by it. But they're just going to keep sort of dropping off him every single time he has the ball. And that's sort of the real, again, it's a conundrum for the Clippers moving ahead as well. At the end of games, what does their lineup consist of? And most likely it's going to be Terrence Mann, who does finish off games as well. Mann's a capable three-point shooter too. He provides so much energy, as we saw a couple of years ago when they beat the Utah Jazz in 6 games in the 2021 Western Conference semifinals. He provides all of that, Alex, too. So wouldn't be surprised if he's that 5th and final starter when it comes down to the last 4 or 5 minutes of game time. So that's where the real sort of issue does stem down to. There's no way Russ is going to be put back into a bench role. We've already seen that, right, when he was with the Lakers from about I think it was about March of 2022 as well, where I think Frank Vogel basically just cut the puppet strings and said, well, we've got to basically get you from the starting lineup onto the bench. And basically, I think there was a time there where Russ did start, and then it came down to like the last 5-6 minutes of regulation where he wasn't even on the court at all. So that's where I think the real sort of worry is. And we saw last season, right, where Russ did come to the Clippers and it was on that friendly deal, right? And basically it was pretty much promised to him that he would be the starter from however long onwards he does decide to play for the Clippers. And now that Harden has come along, which really in hindsight now, I was hoping that deal wouldn't have sort of gone down that way as well, because just wanting to see more of Russ be himself as well. And he's not really, in terms of his reckless abandonment, just going absolutely full helter-skelter, just coughing the ball over 5-6 times a game. He sort of has evenly temperamented down on that, I think, a bit, Alex.
I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, Tom and Jack, on what I'm about to say. I wish I could remember which front office executive it was, but a few years ago they were on the Low Post podcast saying that the silent killer in the NBA is overlap. And I think that's exactly what's going on with the Clippers right now. And I'll use the previous Clippers example of DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin. Very similar athletic forward positions in the alley-oop era Clippers, and they could never get past that hump. The Raptors are having that problem now with Scotty Barnes, Pascal Siakam, and OG Anunoby all kind of blending between that positional versatility. And I think the Clippers now have got the same problem with Russell Westbrook and James Harden. It sounds silly, like there's only room for one of them on that team, but there's too much overlap on that team. They don't have a great starting center. I mean, Ivica Zubac is a solid starting center. He can't really defend that well. Jack and Tom, I'd be interested in your thoughts because this Clippers team has looked...
I couldn't agree more on the overlap. It's something that I've been thinking about myself, and I know a lot of other people have used this example as well. But you've got four blokes that want to play ISO ball on the court at the same time as well. You've got obviously those four that we speak about. Zubac probably not so much, but in terms of that team there with Harden and Westbrook, you've got Westbrook's probably defense ability and being mobile and able to move around, even if it is playing by himself a little bit, which is its own thing, whereas Harden doesn't really have that defensive capabilities in him, but he still wants to play that sort of similar like drive game. So then they're not dishing the ball out, but when they are, then they're overusing it. For me, it's like you need to sort of gel them into one, and I just think it's just the weirdest trade ever. And I think they just want to get stars in for the Clippers. They've got this new stadium that's going to be up next year. It's just like we're going to have all these big names around it, but is that going to get you a winning team? We've seen it fail before. And funnily enough, like you said, we've seen it with James Harden as well, especially at the Nets.
Look, I want you guys to just sort of cast your mind back to the middle of 2019 in the off-season and just remember what it was like when we all got that notification, the Woj bomb of Kawhi Leonard has signed with the LA Clippers as a free agent. And then about 5 minutes later, it's the LA Clippers are trading for Paul George. And all the instant reactions were, oh my God, what a duo. This is the best two-way duo in the league, and they're going to dominate both ends of the court, and that's what's going to separate these guys from the Lakers and from everyone else. They don't defend anymore. Like, they just don't. And they've brought in guys who don't defend either. And, you know, when was the last time you saw James Harden do a decent defensive play? Like the bubble against OKC? Really? It's just, they're not the same team. And look, I'll touch on a little bit more on this in my performance of the week later on in the show, but this team just hasn't been built correctly, and it is like Jack said, they want big names to the stadium because you know what's not a good name to put on a billboard. 2028 future first round pick. Like, it's not exciting. It's not going to sell tickets. But James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, and Paul George is. But they might sell tickets. I don't think they're going to be selling any championship parade tickets with them. So good luck to them. But for the moment, I'm completely out on this Clippers team.
All right, moving on to our quick news recap of what's happened in the NBA in the last week. And just before we started recording today, Sixers guard Kelly Oubre Jr. was hit by a vehicle, apparently, and is currently in hospital. ESPN's reporting that he'll be out for some time, but the injuries are serious but not considered season-ending, so it makes you think maybe it's a leg fracture or, something that might heal within 8 to 12 weeks. Oubre's been very good for Philly. I, on my own show, Bibble Bites, kind of lambasted that acquisition. I thought he was no good, and I was like, they're really going to start Kelly Oubre Jr. He's been a key cog in that offense. Philly has the 4th best defensive rating in the league at 118. He averages 16 and 5 rebounds on 50% from the floor through 8 games. Massive loss. Quick thoughts on Kelly Oubre Jr. and that loss, that hole is going to leave for Philly. 30 seconds from each of you there.
Yeah, definitely, I think too, Alex, and the three-point shooting, because the Sixers, I think, rank like second last or third last for three-point attempts, and he usually takes, 5 or 6 per game, and we've seen right throughout his career, when he started with the Wizards, he was sort of more fringe playing the way, and then sort of had to work himself into a rotation and got that opportunity, probably 2016-17, then it wasn't even until like 2017-18, where we talked about last week, where he started, I think it was the first 9 or 10 games in favour of Markieff Morris. He was still, I think, sidelined due to an injury at that point and really sort of grasped his opportunity. And we saw it as well with the Charlotte Hornets. I think last season he averaged about 20 points, which is a career high too. So his offense isn't an issue one bit too, which has been a real sort of nice complementary blend to the Sixers, because I think we're going into the season must have all been thinking, where's the offense going to come from without Joel Embiid, of course, and Tyrese Maxey, who average over 25 points per game. Embiid averages, 30.7 or something, and Maxey averages 25, 26 points per game. That was always maybe a little area of concern, but they've seemed to address that issue. But now that he's out for whatever extended period of time, it does sort of leave a bit of a setback too. But it's been more sort of, I think, what they were looking forward to in terms of just extra energy, because that's what the whole Philadelphia is represented on, right, Alex, is basically toughness. And we saw that during the Allen Iverson era, right, with under coach Larry Brown, where all the players that represented the 76ers were all hard and rugged and basically dive down for loose balls, the 50-50 balls, and really give it at all. And I think that's what Nick Nurse has really brought this early going to the 76ers, and the fans have reacted really positively to it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. The thing is with Oubre, I thought he was really going to have a breakout year and be massive. So it's disappointing to hear that news, but he does offer something different. And I thought it was going to be that breakout year for him. So hopefully he gets back out there.
Yeah, you just have to really feel for him. I mean, he's never really found his place, especially since he was involved in that trade with for Chris Paul from the Suns. And now this freak injuries happen just as it looked like he was finally, learning how to really make an impact in the NBA. And so, just have to feel for him. And the Sixers as well. They were clicking, and now they lose a valuable part after looking like they'd completely recovered from James Harden's off-season drama.
Yeah, we'll stick with the injury theme. I'm going to list out, I think I've got 5 injuries in front of me, and I'd like to go around and you can pick which is the most impactful or the worst. Portland are going to be without Robert Williams III. He's going to miss the rest of the season as he undergoes a third knee operation. Portland will also miss Scoot Henderson for the next 2 or 3 weeks with a sprained ankle. Tyler Hero and Cam Thomas also sprained ankles for Miami and Brooklyn. And then CJ McCollum's going to miss probably some time for the Pelicans with a collapsed lung. He had the same injury in December of 2021 while he was with Portland, and he missed about 3 or 4 weeks around Christmas time then. So, Jack, we'll start with you. Which is the most impactful or worst of those injuries?
I do think that probably the last one, CJ McCollum. I think that they were really starting to gel and hopefully grab that sort of health that I spoke about at the start of the year. It was the number one word for the Pelicans was the health. So seeing him come out, I think it's just going to disrupt a few things. And I reckon they're going to be in a bit of strife now that he's out.
They've got all sorts of injury issues. Like Ingram's already missed a game. We've talked about Zion Williamson ad nauseum. Jose Alvarado hasn't played a game this year yet. Trey Murphy III is not going to be back till after Christmas. I think they're 4-5 at the moment, so they're teetering on 500. Tom, what's the most impactful out of those injuries for you?
I don't know if it's most impactful out of all those ones, but just one that's kind of really important is the Jamal Murray one. I mean, who knows how long he'll be out for.
I don't think I read that out. Sorry.
Sorry.
I totally missed it. Yeah, no, that's my bad. Jamal Murray, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, my bad. I just in autopilot mode over here. But no, yeah, look, he's going to miss the rest of the month with that hamstring injury, and he'll miss most of the in-season tournament, pretty much all of it. So not that I don't know if anyone really cares or not. But look, how are the Nuggets going to do without their second star? I mean, the last time he missed a significant chunk, they were, a 7 seed or something, a 6 seed, 7 seed at the end of the season. Obviously, he's not out for the whole year, so I'm not exactly expecting the sky to fall for Denver. And they are 2-0 since the injury, with wins against the Pelicans and the Warriors. It's not like they've just beaten bottom lottery teams. And really, I think it comes back as I think Jokic has now got to count for more than one star. I think he's 1.5 of a star because it's just the way he elevates his team. He pretty much counts as 1.5 star players. I haven't seen anything like this. Like even Giannis in his prime, and now even, I mean, he had 50 something points the other night and still couldn't get the win against the Pacers. Whereas Jokic is just coming out and he's dominating every facet of the game, and I'm impressed. So I don't think anything really that bad's going to happen, assuming this Murray injury doesn't linger. But then again, he is an injury-prone player, unfortunately, and I hate seeing him miss time.
Silver linings, extra opportunity there for Aaron Gordon and MPJ to show what they've got as well. Yuri, what's the most impactful or worst out of those injuries?
Yeah, definitely agree with Jack on this one with CJ McCollum and that collapsed lung once more, which is just, it sort of hits at the wrong time, right? The Pelicans have lost their last 4 games in a row after starting the season 4-1. And we saw Jordan Hawkins really step up, though, watching the game against the Denver Nuggets.
I saw the box score and went, who the hell is this? Yeah, rookie
31
Jordan Hawkins.
points. Yep, the 14th overall pick in this, I think it was this year's or last year's draft.
This year's, he's a rookie, yeah.
Yeah, this year's draft, yeah. So that was a real encouraging sign as well for the Pelicans too. Gave him some starters minutes out there on the floor too. But that's the real sort of interesting part as well, because CJ orchestrates so much of their offense, not just when he's running the point, but off ball too, when they want to sort of go for more of that offensive scheme too, which we've seen at various stages this season too. But I think with the Pelicans as well, it's sort of a bit hit and miss at this stage with their offense, and their defense gets really clouded to the opponent. We saw against the Denver Nuggets where they were just absolutely eaten up probably after halftime when they had a 20-point lead, and then all of a sudden it just kept getting whittled away, right? And we saw Jokic just absolutely go off as always, and the points in the paint and the three-point shooting of Denver just completely tore them down to smithereens. They could never really recover from that point. So that's going to be the real issue, I think, for Pelicans moving ahead as well, as how can they cover the three-point line as well? Because we saw it again against the Houston Rockets yesterday too, when I think Fred VanVleet hit that go-ahead 3 too. And I think they had was it an 8-point lead at one stage as well, 5 minutes left, and they coughed it up once more. So there's a game which basically has gone down the drain for them, and one that really in hindsight they should have won too. But yes, it's still early days at this stage.
All right, for our next segment, we're going to talk about the most underrated teams in the league. It's been about 3.5 weeks. Lots of really good NBA basketball, but there's 28 markets, there's 30 teams. We can't all see everything. I'll start because I have a lot of stats for a team I've watched 3 of their last 4 games out of and thought they were going to be completely dog shit. The Houston Rockets are currently 5th in the West. What the hell? They're on a 5-game win streak, so they lost their first 3 games, then have won their last 5. 2 of those against the Kings, 1 against the Pels, 1 against the Lakers. So decent competition. They destroyed the Lakers. They play at the slowest pace in the league, but hold opponents to only 106 points per game. So that's the 8th best defensive rating, and they allow the least amount of opposing assists in the league as well. Look, small sample size, 8 games, but really interesting stuff from a lengthy team. Fred VanVleet's 16 points, 8 rebounds average. He isn't shooting that great, mid-30s from both the floor and from 3. But Jalen Green's shooting 41% from 3 for 20 points a game. Dylan Brooks has been okay. He shoots 55 from 3 for the season. I didn't look it up, but I have a feeling they're all corner threes. And Alperen Şengün, I talked myself out of voting him most improved for the year. He's averaging 19 points, 8.5 rebounds, 6 assists, shooting 61% from the floor as a 61-year-old. This dude is so good at basketball. If you don't watch the Houston Rockets, just Google Alperen Şengün highlights. I'll put a video up myself in a few days. He is skillful, craftful. He does a lot of work right by the hoop. I don't think he can push his range out to 3 yet like Jokic can, and he's not a great defender. He's getting a little bit better than he was last year. The Houston Rockets, I'm not saying they're going to be a play-in team. They've been very fun to watch. I would like your thoughts. And then, Jack, if you've got an underrated team, feel free to sneak one in.
Yeah, look, I had the Rockets down for one of my performances, one of the plays from there, so I'll leave the Rockets for now. So I completely agree with that. But for me, it's probably the Indiana Pacers. They're 6-3 at the moment. They're 3rd in the Eastern Conference. For me, I didn't see the hype around the Pacers at all. I'm like, you've still got the same team from last year. Yeah, you might see a little bit of growth within that. I know they've added Bruce Brown, who's been a good cog for that team, but I was like, I don't think Halliburton's going to be able to continue that this year. I don't know what it was. I just didn't think he was that sort of player. But early days, but 6-3 start to the year, and they've won their last 3 in a row. Miles Turner's been excellent probably the last 4 or 5 games as well. He's been interesting to watch. So for me, yeah, the Pacers are more exciting, and I give them more credit now than what I did earlier.
Tom and Yuri?
I think a big takeaway from the Rockets is, and it really pains me to say this, but Ime Udoka is a hell of a coach. Two of the biggest what ifs at the moment are what if he didn't get, suspended and eventually fired from the Celtics, and what if the Nets actually went through and hired him? Because people are quick to forget he was pretty much going to get that job after Steve Nash. And who knows, maybe Durant and Kyrie are still there and they're a championship team, or they've at least made it to the finals, but who knows? That's all folklore now. What he's doing with his Rockets team is impressive. Şengün is, I'm a huge fan of his, and I was listening to the Bill Simmons podcast, and there's an article in the Ringer coming out, a profile on him soon, which I'm very excited to read about. And even Fred VanVleet, I mean, even in tonight's game, there were quite a few Raptors fans saying, "God, we miss him," and yeah, they were wearing that jersey behind you as well, Alex.
What about you, Yuri? What do you think of the Houston Rockets or the Indiana Pacers? And then if you've got an underrated team, bring one up as well.
Yeah, definitely both teams have gotten off to excellent starts as well. And I thought Indiana might have taken just that next leap, not sort of a major leap, but a leap to be a playing team as well from what they've been building the last 3 seasons too, and probably all the way from, last season, just to really start from scratch as well. And I think Rick Carlisle always does a great job with teams that he does sort of take over from. And we saw a long time ago, right, Alex, with the Detroit Pistons back in 2001, they were an absolute basket case at this point. They needed a coach who really sort of had built a significant amount of experience as an assistant, and he'd done that with the Indiana Pacers under Larry Bird in the late 90s and helped turn that Detroit team around in 01-02 to from, I think it was a 32-win team to a 50-win team, the second spot in Eastern Conference that year. And it wouldn't be surprising that way. I'm not going to say that the Pacers going to win 50 games. No, far from that. But if they win 44, 45 games, and the way the Eastern Conference is situated this early going, then they can be a playing team, right? With Miles Turner, and it has sort of been listed across the seasons, him being in trade rumors. Yes, and then he eventually signs that 2 year, $60 million extension and does decide to stay with the Pacers. And I think the Lakers were one of the rumoured teams that are looking to trade for him. Only a rumour, but he fits what they're looking for in terms of the interior defence. And it's no wonder why they drafted him all those years ago, back in 2015, for that solid rim protector. And that's why he's been providing. And when he had Bruce Brown there too, whose offensive game has absolutely sparked in leaps and bounds, and now he no longer has that uncertainty as, what my role's going to be, right? Because he talked about it, I think, before he signed with the Denver Nuggets, when Calvin Booth and him agreed to a deal, that it was like, I think teams don't know how to use me properly. And that's exactly what the Nuggets figured out with him, and that's what the Pacers are doing exceptionally well with him too. And we're seeing Tyrese Halliburton just, again, he's just an absolutely sublime all-star. Yeah. He is. And his shooting action may not sort of garner a lot of, smoothness about it, like a Bradley Beal, but it's effective, right? When he shoots, 47, 48% from the field, and when he dished 12.4 assists per game and averaged, 24.2 points or something, the Indiana Pacers haven't had a point guard like that who've averaged those numbers, right? They've had steady point guards over the years, like a George Hill, who was a very reliable defender, and Mark Jackson, of course, all those years ago. But Tyrese just takes it to another level. And that's where I think the Pacers are sort of really helped themselves along the way too, is that there's this whole accountability that meshes together with the players that they do have from not just an offensive standpoint, but a defensive standpoint too. And that's what's really held them in really good stead this early going at 6-3. And as for the Houston Rockets too, when was the last time they had a defensive identity about them in 2 decades, right?
Yeah, I was completely surprised by those defensive stats. As I said, I watched a few of those games and went, geez, these are slow games. There's a lot of lengthy arms in the paint and in passing lanes. And I looked up the stats in anticipation of today's show, and I couldn't believe my eyes with that far ahead of the league in some of those stuff. Incredible. Yuri, touch on the Rockets one more time, and then if you've got an extra underrated team, let us know and we can discuss.
Yeah, just one thing about the Rockets over the years, Alex, right? When have you ever seen them as a defensive identity side, right? Probably not under the Kevin McHale era as well. Probably not under the Rudy Tomjanovich era. Most likely under the Jeff Van Gundy era is the last time when a Rockets team has had this really defensive resolve about it.
They tried for a little bit with Dwight Howard, but that was a mistake. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Yep. So on also about my underrated team as well. I've got Minnesota Timberwolves. Just been watching them for the last 3-4 games as well. And this whole accountability on defense, which has considerably changed from last season, right? And it was really strange, right? We talked about it when they lost to the Pistons in New Year's Eve, and Chris Finch wasn't happy one bit at all. And they were 5 games under 500 at that point at 16-21, and they coughed up that 18-point lead, and they were really sort of trying to figure themselves out. But now this early going in the season, they sit 6-2. They're 5-0 at home, which is their best start at the Target Center since 2013-14 when they won 5 of their first 6 games. And everything's clicking together. The rebounding has been absolutely off the charts at this point. They're third at the moment in the league, I think about 47.6, which only trails the Boston Celtics and New York Knicks for total rebounds per game. So they've got everything meshing at this stage as well. You know who else I'd like to see Chris Finch play just a little bit more off the bench, Alex?
Off the bench? I'm sure you'll let us know.
Yeah, off the bench.
No, I've got no idea.
I think Troy Brown Jr., just for extra defensive purposes.
Not where I thought you were going at all. Tom and Jack, have you watched any Wolves basketball? Because I have seen plenty of highlights of Anthony Edwards throwing down windmill dunks this last week, but I haven't watched a single game for 2 weeks now.
Yeah, I've watched a little bit of the Wolves, but I'm still not convinced that they can get this team. It's like just the egos in the team. You can sort of see it from the way that it is with Cat, Gobert, Edwards. It's like clearly it should be Edwards' team going forward, but Cat thinks he's the best 3-point shooter in the big man in the league. There's all this sort of chat about the way that sort of Cat operates. And Gobert, we've seen little flashes of what he can do with huge rebounds, huge stats, but defensively, I don't know. I think he can be actually more of a liability than what people think, even though he can get a lot of blocks. So for me, I just don't think that the Timberwolves will be able to gel with that team together going forward. But that's just my hot take.
Tom, I was waiting for you while I looked up the stats.
I on the Timberwolves.
It's a late night in Boston. We'll forgive you.
It's a late night in Boston. It's a late night in Boston. But on the Timberwolves, should the Timberwolves just pull the trigger and trade Cat now then? And would they be better just trading him for role players?
This is sort of blasphemy. They're 6-2. You can't be trading.
They're 6-2, but you could. You can get better. You can always get better. I think ultimately, when it comes to the playoffs, Gobert and Cat just aren't going to work together. And Edwards, it's his team. We saw that even against the Celtics, he took over, and yes, he was great against Tatum. But I mean, the Timberwolves PR team have gone on a bit of a spin with a 5-minute documentary about it. I mean, let's settle it to November game. But no, look, I think they should sell high on Cat. It's not like he's been spectacular, and Naz Reid has actually probably been better.
That's where I wanted to get to.
Yeah. There's a comparison where his stats are actually just as good, if not better. So I don't know. New York is always calling Cat's name. Apparently, I don't really see why, but not saying they should go get Randall for him, but who knows? They could piece together some nice assets with him.
Yeah, Cat's not shooting great from 3 to start the season. 32% on 6 attempts a game. Naz Reid playing half the amount of minutes. 43% from 3 on about 4 attempts per game. I love Naz Reid. I don't know why I love him so dearly. I just do. Yuri, wrap up on the Timberwolves, and then we'll get to our performances of the week.
You surely don't think Karl Anthony Towns would want to trade to New York, considering Tom Thibodeau is still the coach, right? And Tibbs coached him at Minnesota too, and there was no defense one bit whatsoever. So I don't think he'll be steering in that direction, right, with Tibbs barking up his rearview mirror, accounting for more defense. I don't think we've heard that too many times with Tibbs over the last couple of seasons. He sort of seemed to have mellowed down his barking from the sidelines, unlike a few coaches in the NBL.
All right, getting to performances of the week. Shock horror, mine is Scotty Barnes versus the Spurs. They were down 17 points in the fourth, and they clawed back to win an OT in that game about 6 days ago. Barnes finished with 30 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 steals, and 3 blocks. Damn near 5x5 again. And he scored on 3 possessions in a row, and then bullied Jeremy Sohan on the third under the point, under the took an offensive rebound, got under the paint, backed him down, and just dunked on him. And that brought it down to a 2-possession game in the fourth when it had been blown out. He's been incredible for them. I'm starting to see the Scotty Barnes slide. I haven't, I'm a Raptors guy. I haven't always been on that train. I'm starting to see it. There's been a lot of talk around NBA podcasts and former players saying that, they should let him be the Pippen to somebody's Jordan because he's that good. And I'm not ready to go there. Jack, performance of the week from you is?
an an ex Raptors player. Got confused there myself. But on Scotty Barnes, I actually agree on that. He's going to be elite. Like, I think he's going to be one of those great players in the future. So you should be happy if they can keep him, Alex. For me, like I said, ex-Raptor, I'm going with Fred VanVleet. Now, his stats weren't absolutely incredible in the 104 to 101 win against the Pelicans, but he had 20 points, 8 assists, and 3 rebounds. But the big thing was he played 40 minutes in that game. And I just felt like he was on the decline, sort of heading towards the end of last year. To play 40 minutes in a game is great. And the Rockets, like we spoke about earlier, they're 5-3. I just think that if he can have performances like that going forward, it's really going to fast track the Rockets going into the future. So, yeah, he's been impressive for me in the last couple of games.
Tom, your performance of the week. This is the last thing we need from you two. So if you want to go to bed, you can just say it and get dip.
No, I'm still, I'm just getting better
wired
as
from a
the
Celtics
quarters roll on.
victory. Yeah.
I am wired from a Celtics victory, and I did resist picking a player from one of the games I've been to so far, but I had to go. I couldn't go past Luka's performance against the Clippers the other night. I mean, 44 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. But that, to me, that's not even what's impressive about the stat line. It was 17 from 21 from the field. I mean, he missed 4 shots the whole game. He only played 32 minutes and was a plus 32. Like, that's insanity. And I just think maybe he's finally piecing together his MVP year. I think we were waiting for this last few years, and he always came into the season a little bit unfit and just not at his peak performance. And he obviously hadn't taken the preseason to its full extent. This year, though, he's come in fit and firing after the World Championships, and he's just, the Mavs are looking the best, and they've looked in probably the whole time he's been there. And he's got a great supporting cast. I mean, again, not to keep talking about the Celtics, but it is paining me to see Grant Williams slotting in perfectly to that team.
Yeah, he's been really good.
And circling back to what I was talking about the Clippers before, do they even just bother trying to stop him? Like, do they know who he is? Like, do they go into their team meetings and assess who he is? Because he's averaged 34.1 points, 8.9 rebounds, and 8.6 assists against them since 2020, and that's including the playoff games, and that's 26 games. That's ridiculous. I mean, Kawhi Leonard's supposed to be the best at stopping guys. I mean, he basically won the Spurs a championship for stopping LeBron. If they have another playoff series, that Clippers supposedly would probably have the more depth in their stars, but Luka would probably just average 40 against them at this rate.
Yuri, your performance of the week.
Yeah, got Anthony Edwards once more too, Alex. Another 30-point game, 38 this time against the Celtics, which Tom watched in the Timberwolves overtime win. And it's not just the scoring as well, which he absolutely went red hot in that final period, but it's his facilitating right. And it was always an area which he could always improve upon as well. And we saw last season him taking that next step as well with his passing and finding his teammates, whether on corner threes or kickouts and all that. I think he averaged 4.4 assists last season, and this season he's averaging about 5.3. And it's not just the passing alone, which has gotten a lot better. It's the spots he's picking out in the most crucial situations. There was one play, I think they were down 95, 92 or something like that, and there was about 5 minutes left in regulation, and he's on the left baseline, and he decides, instead of going into the trees of the Celtics defenders in the paint, he kicks it out where I think no Celtics defender would have expected him to. Just whips out to Jalen McDaniels out in the corner, and he knocks down a 3. And then the next possession, I think overtime as well. And it was almost not identically the same play, but he was on the right hand side, and he decides to, instead of driving to rim, he kicks it out to McDaniels once more, and he also drains another baseline corner 3. And it's those plays and trusting his teammates in those moments alone, which he has gotten so much better at too, Alex. And I think it's really taken the pressure off Michael Conley to having to facilitate all the time as well. And it's really just showing his whole evolution, right? Not just from being that absolutely all-round dynamic scorer, but a guy who's improved so much on the defensive end as well, willing to take on the opposition's best shooting guard, small forward, like the Timberwolves have done with, of course, McDaniels doing that every single game. But his whole, just, again, passing and floor vision was just tremendous.
Yeah, that overtime performance from Ant is the first time this season I've seen someone and gone, that this guy is it. Like, we saw that in the playoffs last year with Jimmy Butler. We see it a couple times every year. I thought I was being ridiculous in overtime. He had a couple big threes, was making the right plays because he almost threw the game away in the fourth with some really long, ill-advised threes. I thought I was being ridiculous watching the game going, there's a little bit of MJ in what he's doing. I go online half an hour later on my lunch break and everybody is going, this dude is MJ. MJ must be his dad. I saw MJ for 5 minutes at the end of this game. If you haven't seen the highlights, just from overtime, he was good in the rest of the game, but he had a couple bad turnovers and mistakes at the end of the fourth. The overtime performance from Anthony Edwards at his age gave me like the hairs on the back of my neck and my arms were standing up. It was that good. A couple other performances. Feel free to jump in, guys. We didn't even talk about Joel Embiid scoring 29 points in a single quarter. He had 48, 11, and 6 on like 25 shots in 3 quarters against the Wizards. I think that one was against. Giannis had 54 either yesterday or 2 days. The days are blending into each other at the moment. In a tight loss against the Pacers. Benedict Mathurin for Indiana had the best game of his career, I think, in that game. He finished with 26 and 11. But in the fourth quarter, he had 2 offensive rebounds, a steal, a block, and 8 points when the game mattered, when it got tight. That was the best game I've seen the second-year guy play, and he's Canadian, so I have a soft spot for him out of Montreal. Anything else you guys want to flag before we move on to... I don't think we've got a Team of the Week from you, Jack, this week, so it's just straight into the 30-second recap. Anything else anyone want to mention?
The only thing I want to mention is what is going on at the Milwaukee Bucks at the moment. Brook Lopez has dropped off tremendously as well.
Yeah.
Just I think we all sort of know that the Dame and the Giannis thing, and everyone's probably already well across it. But I don't know what to think of them at the moment and where they're positioning.
Yuri, is Malik Beasley supposed to be a good defender?
No, that's the brutal, honest truth, Alex. And that's where the whole deficiencies, I think, sort of having, of course, trading away Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard, the defense was always going to take a backward step, but the defensive rating this year has been absolutely porous, to say the least, as well. And it hasn't been this bad for, last time I can remember was probably a decade. And when Jason Kidd took over in 2014, the Bucks considerably improved as a defensive outfit that season, finishing 5th. And yeah, it's really it's a glaring concern once more. And sort of keep harping over this as well. But every single screener get caught on and can't fight through it. And then just even today against Orlando, they gave up 20 second chance points or something. It was just not funny at all. And the rebounding, which has been the Bucks' strong suit for the last 5-6 seasons, that's dropped down to, I think, second last now on I think it's 40 rebounds or 41 rebounds per game. It's just not funny at all. And there was one play there during the third where, okay, Brook Lopez has never been a strong rebounder, right? I think the most rebounds he's averaged was about 8.1 when he was with the New Jersey Nets all those years ago. And I think his All-Star year, which the only All-Star appearance he made in 2013, because Rajon Rondo, I think, tore his ACL, I think it was against the Atlanta Hawks or something in like January 2013. And Brook averaged only 6.9 rebounds that season. I think he averaged like 19.4 points. But everyone knows with Brook Lopez, and every Bucks fan knows, that it's not just he'll grab the rebound with both hands. He'll just try and tap it out. And we saw that against Orlando where he tapped it out and the ball went straight to a Magic play. And you just think to yourself, just yank the rebound down. Like, we've just seen it too many times this early going through 9 games. And just, it's really concerning in a way too. It's not as concerning to say, well, okay, the Bucks are 3-9 on the season like back in 2000, 2001. No, it's not that situation. But sitting in this spot at the moment, I think 7th now in the Eastern Conference and back in the playoff playing picture isn't timely one bit whatsoever. And Chris Middleton's minutes as well. I think he played about 21 minutes on restricted minutes once more. And are they going to do something like what the Clippers did with Kawhi Leonard, last season, 2 seasons ago, when they gradually ramped up his minutes to 31 to 32 to 37.4 by about January? We won't be seeing Middleton's minutes ramp up to 35, 36 minutes anytime soon. So that's just a few areas to really sort of point across. And also field goal percentage too. Opposition field goal percentage was checking about a couple of days ago, Alex. It was like 50.3 or something.
Yeah, they're getting everything.
It's laborious, man. And it's just some accountability's got to take place, right? And it was like the Brooklyn Nets in 2013-14. Remember where teams were just bashing them all up left, right, and center, and they fell to 10-21, and Joe Johnson hits that game-winning 3 against OKC, and their whole fortunes change around. I'm not saying the Bucks going to fall to 10-21. That's just absurd one bit. But don't turn this around and they're maybe stuck like they were all those years ago when they missed out in the playoffs and lost to Jack's Detroit Pistons on the final day.
Tom,
not to rub salt into the rebounding wound, but I think Drew Holiday's actually leading the Celtics in rebounds so far this season.
That's exactly what I was going to go.
Yeah,
I
must say, exactly, and I must say he is just a delight to watch in person. That guy for what, he's 33, I think, or 32. He just got a motor. He just runs around. He chases people. And there are times where these last two nights where I've been to the games where he's taken on sort of a little hovering double team sort of role. And I'm like, why would you leave your man open? And then the moment they pass the ball, he's there somehow. People around me are saying, gee, Drew Holiday, like, how did we get him for two very injury-prone players, one of which is now out for the season, unfortunately, which you never want to see. And I love watching Rob Williams play, and I was watching that game live, and seeing him go down was just awful. But it really wasn't that much of a contact injury, and to think we got Drew Holiday for that, I'm over the moon. And I don't know, maybe the Bucks were better off just keeping Holiday instead of getting Lillard. Who knows?
That's a sore subject, I think, for Yuri. I feel maybe it's too early. They got a rookie head coach. They're working through some things, but yeah, if they don't have Dame playing heavy minutes and giving him good shooting, then it's an interesting conversation to have. Yuri, 10 seconds, and then we need to wrap up for today.
Oh, and I think Coach Griffin as well, I think it was the Raptors game, had addressed the issue he made with Brook Lopez in terms of his coaching mistake as well. Brook, instead of having up too high, they wanted to play more in a drop coverage. So he managed to at least figure out and readjust the situation, which of course suits to Brook's strengths as well, being that rim protector. So he owned up in that aspect too, and hopefully that just continues to be the ongoing sort of trend moving forward as well. But those points per game, right? It's about 119 or something on average the Bucks are conceding. It's a bit of a pancake slap at this stage.
A pancake slap? I haven't ever heard that before. All right, that's the end of today's episode. We have a little fantasy draft here at the Mojo Sports Network, a fantasy league rather. Last week, Ben demolished my team 8-1. Jules demolished Jack's team 8-1. We've kind of almost fell out of it for the year. This week, Jules and I, in the matchup, it's tied. It's like 1 assist, 1 rebound, splitting everybody. But Ben, I think... Jack, I think you're getting destroyed again by Ben, and you won't be able to come back in a couple of days. So I'm not sure what's going on, mate. What's your excuse?
I'm forgetting to reset my team. Because I've got two teams on there, so the other one's got a bit more at stake, but I'll pay a bit more attention to it this week.
All right, Tom, are you going to any games this week?
Yeah, so I've got Celtics Knicks on Monday in America time, so Tuesday Australia time, then Thursday Australia time, Celtics Sixers in Philly, which if I'm not on the pod next week, you'll know why I haven't made it out of Philadelphia.
Are you going to wear a Celtics jersey to that game?
I don't know if I'm brave enough. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see, but I have bought my secondary phone case to replace this one just in case. I might bring a plain one for that one just in case, so I can take some photos without getting a few looks. But and then Friday, the most anticipated game on my list, it's Knicks Wizards in Washington, the Jordan Poole show. I just can't wait to watch it. But no, that was cheap tickets, and I'm in Washington, so I figured, that's when I've really got a basketball problem, when I'm willing to go to see that and pay money to see that. But yeah, that's this week, and then week after, can't wait to get back on the show because Celtics Bucks. Yuri and I'll be sending photos in the group chat, that's for sure, and I literally just cannot wait for that one.
Shout out Kyle Kuzma. He's been really good for Washington. Everyone else in that team sucks, including Jordan Poole. But Kyle Kuzma could find himself in a decent destination at the end of this year. He got to be averaging 25 on like 55% shooting. He's been great. If we're talking about Kyle Kuzma, it's time to wrap the show up. That's how bad we've gone off the rails. So thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for joining me. This has been the NBA show on the Mojo Sports Network. If you're still here, consider leaving us a 5-star review. I think we're up to 50 odd on Spotify, a bit less on Apple Podcasts. If you're into the NBL, Ben does some Twitter recaps every week. I think on Tuesdays. Yuri, we can find you at the Sportscape Chronicles. Jack, you run Sports Confidential. You're the CEO over there. Tom, you're just our guy overseas now. You're the international correspondent. I'm going to label that for a long time. If you want daily NBA, I run a 5-minute show called B-Ball Bites, available on Spotify, YouTube. Anything else anyone wants to say before we go?
Enjoy your time. Tom.
Yeah. Well, if you guys want more pre-game tips, I nailed my Jaylen Brown one last night, so hit me up.
He said over 25. There you go. Thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers, Alex.
Thanks, Alex.